أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأمل حي على خير الأمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله صلوات
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, just a reminder, friendly reminder that my salah is qasr. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع على لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع على لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا من أرجوه لكل خير وآمنوا سخطه عند كل شر. يا من يعطي الكثير بالقليل. يا من يعطي من سأله. يا من يعطي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرف. تحننا منه ورحمة أعطني بمسألتي إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة، واصرف عني بمسألتي إياك جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة، فإنه غير منقوص ما أعطيت، وزدني من فضلك يا كريم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، يا ذا النعماء والجود، يا ذا المن والتول. حرم شيبتي على النار. صلوات.
Mamneen, inshallah, ziyarat will be recited at the conclusion of tonight's program. Let us recite a loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. Let us begin tonight's program with the recitation of the Holy Quran, for which I would like to request Brother Faisal Rajani to please come forward with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حميم. تنزيل من الرحمن الرحيم. كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون، بشيرا ونذيرا، فأعرض أكثرهم فهم لا يسمعون. وقالوا قلوبنا في أكنة مما تدعونا إليه وفي آذاننا وقر ومن بيننا وبينك حجاب فاعمل إننا عاملون. قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فاستقيموا إليه واستغفروه، وويل للمشركين الذين لا يؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم أجر غير ممنون. قل أئنكم لتكفرون بالذي خلق الأرض في يومين وتجعلون له أندادا ذلك رب العالمين. وجعل فيها رواسي من فوقها وبارك فيها وقدر فيها أقواتها في 4 أيام سواء للسائلين. ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي دخان فقال لها وللأرض ائتيا طوعا أو كرها قالتا أتينا طائعين. فقضاهن 7 سماوات في يومين وأوحى في كل سماء أمرها وزينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وحفظا ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم فإن أعرضوا فقل أنذرتكم صاعقة مثل صاعقة عاد وثمود إذ جاءتهم الرسل من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم ألا تعبدوا إلا الله قالوا لو شاء ربنا لأنزل ملائكة فإنا بما أرسلتم به كافرون فأما عاد فاستكبروا في الأرض بغير الحق وقالوا من أشد منا قوة أولم يروا أن الله الذي خلقهم هو أشد منهم قوة وكانوا بآياتنا يجحدون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
Jazakallah, Brother Faisal. One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. I would like to request Brother Ayan to please come forward to recite a manqabat with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
چند شعر آپ کی سماعتوں کی نظر بر محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. جس گھر میں دیا فرش عزا کا نہیں ہوگا، جس گھر میں دیا فرش عزا کا نہیں ہوگا، سورج سے بھی اس گھر میں اجالا نہیں ہوگا، سورج سے بھی اس گھر میں اجالا نہیں ہوگا، اور خود کرب و بلا جانے کی کوشش نہیں کرتے، خود کرب و بلا جانے کی کوشش نہیں کرتے، پھر کہتے ہیں مولا کا بلاوا نہیں ہوگا، پھر کہتے ہیں مولا کا بلاوا نہیں ہوگا، اور میں کرب و بلا جاؤں گا معراج کی خاطر، میں کرب و بلا جاؤں گا معراج کی خاطر، لیکن میری معراج میں پردہ نہیں ہوگا، لیکن میری معراج میں پردہ نہیں ہوگا. بر محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. آسمانوں کو زمینوں پہ بچھایا جائے، آسمانوں کو زمینوں پہ بچھایا جائے، ماہ حیدر ہے کعبے کو سجایا جائے، ماہ حیدر ہے کعبے کعبے کو سجایا جائے اور چھوڑ کر چاکی یہ کہنے لگی ایک دن زہرا، چھوڑ کر چاکی یہ کہنے لگی ایک دن زہرا، آج غازی کے لیے کرتا منگایا جائے، آج غازی کے لیے کرتا منگایا جائے۔ اور کون تھے دشمن زہرا علی و شبیر، کون تھے دشمن زہرا علی و شبیر، گھر میں بچوں کو ہر ایک نام بتایا جائے، گھر میں بچوں کو ہر ایک نام بتایا جائے، اور رن میں 9 لاکھ کو دیکھا تو یہ بولے اصغر، رن میں 9 لاکھ کو دیکھا تو یہ بولے اصغر، بابا مٹی کے کھلونوں کو ہٹایا جائے، بابا مٹی کے کھلونوں کو ہٹایا جائے، آسمانوں کو زمینوں پہ بچھایا جائے، بر محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. Jazakallah, Brother Ayan, for that beautiful recitation. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Elders, Sayyid, Sheikh, Ustad, and my brothers, Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations to all Mu'mineen on the night of the Bi'thah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjil farajahum. We are honored to have Sayyid Hasan Ali Rizvi here speaking as guest speaker tonight for this program. Just a few quick reminders before I request the Sayyid to ascend the mimbar. Inshallah, this Friday and Saturday, January 31st and February 1st, we are honored to have Sayyid back again on the pulpit for the Jashan of 3 ayat, the celebration of birth for Imam Hussein, Imam Sajjad, and Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. As always, details for our events are posted on our webpage, cfkdfw.org, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter and our WhatsApp group. Jazakallah to all our sustaining members, donors, volunteers, and program sponsors. If you are not a member yet, please consider becoming one by contacting our membership director, Brother Zain Rangoonwala, and we will be sending out more information on memberships shortly on our WhatsApp group and our email announcements as well. For opportunities to donate, sponsor programs, or help behind the scenes, please speak to myself or any of the volunteers. I would like to request everyone to please recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhum Brother Wajahat Siddiqui. Let us also include our own marhumin and the marhumin of the Ummah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. With this, I would like to request Sayyid Hasan to please ascend the pulpit and request everybody to please move forward with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah.
Thank you very much. I don't have, if you don't, yeah, thanks. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor and a privilege to be back here with you brothers and sisters at the City of Knowledge in Dallas. It's always a wonderful experience for me to be here. I don't know if the feeling's mutual, it might not be, but I always like being here. So I appreciate the invitation, your attention, and especially to be invited on such a auspicious, wonderful night for the 27th of Rajab, where we commemorate, we celebrate, and we honor the personality, the selection, the official designation, and sending the bi'tha or mab'ath of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. You know, human beings, we are wired in a way that all of us, in every single moment, whether consciously or subconsciously, we're looking for meaning. We look out at the world, we look at these signs, we try to figure out, different symbols, we try to recognize patterns that exist. Maybe it's out in nature, something maybe inconsequential, but every single human is trying to give themselves some type of purpose, some level of meaning. And they look within and they look without, right? We're looking in both different worlds. So I look within myself to see who am I, what am I, what's this life about? And then I look outside and see how that outside world connects to me as well too, right? And that's why anybody, right, forget religious people, any person, we have this habit in our languages where we look out at the world, we see different things, we start developing analogies and metaphors and similes. We start to create all these examples just to give us lessons in life, right? So even all these, kind of famous short clips that you'll see online from different influencers or these motivational speakers, they do the same thing, right? So obviously the Quran does that for us, but for other people, they may not want to or need the Quran, and they'll go out and they'll look at the stars, they'll look at something in nature. People who are into art might look at art. They'll find something, they'll interpret it, they'll look at it, they'll give it meaning, and by giving it meaning, they're giving themselves meaning too. The reason you and I are putting meaning on something is because we're looking for meaning ourselves, right? That's why we're doing that. We don't see, and we shouldn't see anything, even an atheist, they're trying to figure out some general purpose, even though they might think that we all came from nothingness or some random pool of, some genetic blob thing, whatever they happen to believe, they're still trying to figure out what do we do while we're here, right? So everybody does this. And what's interesting is the more our eyes are open, the more our mind is open, or in reality, our heart, our soul, the more it's open, you see, the more somebody is open to taking in different messages. Right? You know, when you talk about somebody who's open to different ideas, they're very tolerant of different messages, you know, sometimes we talk about how people of different faiths, they connect sometimes with Islamic messages, right? We as Shias, for example, we love to mention how there are many individuals of different backgrounds and faiths who go for ziyarah, right? They connect with Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam and the Shuhada of Karbala, right? And say, look, so this is something that any human being should be able to take a message from. So yeah, we as Muslims, we are looking out for messages, but non-Muslims are doing it too. And sometimes they even look to our sources to try to get those messages. If they're open-minded, they'll do that. And they'll try to say, yeah, that's nice, right? This good, positive message for humanity. We can take that as well too. And it's good. It's good that people are doing that. But it does come with, some disclaimers. It's nice that people are looking to grab these messages from everywhere. It's nice that non-Muslims will sometimes open, the Quran or see an ayah posted somewhere, and they'll read it and they'll take a message, they'll get inspired by it. And they're like, there's a lot of people who do this on social media now, right? Non-Muslims who will just open the Quran, like, today I felt inspired. I opened the Quran and I read this verse and I just got inspired to share with all of my followers. And they just share whatever their take is, which is, it's cool, it's nice. But if you and I are following it, we want to kind of be supportive. Like, it's good that you're open-minded and you're reading this stuff. But, sometimes their inspiration or the message that they take, it's not exactly correct, right? It's maybe they missed the mark a little bit. Sometimes they completely miss the mark. Sometimes the message is a little incomplete or deficient. But again, we give them brownie points. We're like, A for effort. It's good that you attempted it. But the actual takeaway that you have doesn't seem like that's what Allah wanted you to take away from this in the first place. It's good that you're looking for meaning, but that meaning that you took, missed it a little bit. And it's not just non-Muslims who do that. Obviously, we know very well that there are Muslims sometimes who, miss the mark a little bit too. They can read the same Quran as you and I do, and they read certain ayat, and they get a different message that you and I do, right? We might see something and read about the face of Allah, right? Wajhullah, Yadullah, hand of God. And we will very rationally, honestly, interpret it more metaphorically. We know that God doesn't have, na'udhu billah, a body or a hand or a face, literally, like you and I do. But others, when they're reading it, they think and take it very literally. That no, that's God's face and God's hand, and we don't understand. Like, okay, again, A for effort, sure, you're attempting it, but you missed it a little bit, right? That you would attach a body and a jism to Allah. It's not the right thing to do. Sometimes, these false meanings are not exactly problematic. They're theological differences, and they're minor things. And sometimes they get a little crazy. And the ideas that come out now spark a whole new type of ideology and philosophy, right? There's a lot of famous ones that are out there too. You have some, whether Muslim or otherwise, non-Muslim, they'll grab some of these ayat, the very famous ones, the ones that are always out there, like La ikraha fid din, right? Lakum dinukum waliya din. They say, see, there is no compulsion, there's no forcing in religion, so then their conclusion comes. Anybody who forces any religious stuff, they're going against the book. You can't do that. So sometimes non-Muslims, and sometimes even Muslims, sometimes you and I, we might look at these ayat and interpret it like that. We're giving meaning. What we're doing is taking presumptions, assumptions, all these preconceived notions that we already have. If I already believe in what's called secularism, that no, out in the public world, there's no such thing as religion, right? Everybody has to just be, bare bones minimum human being. Yeah, in your own places of worship, or maybe if you go to your own countries, you can go be religious over there, or in your own houses and stuff. But out in public, everybody's got to act like an atheist. That's, breaking down very simply, that's what secularism is. In the public, for politics, all of that, no, right? There's no religious stuff allowed. And some Muslims, when they read ayat like this, and again, non-Muslims as well too, they say, see, Allah is arguing for secularism here, or they'll even go beyond that, it's pluralism, right? Lakum dinukum waliya din. I got my religion, you have yours. Right? You have yours, I have mine. That's simple. So Allah's saying, follow whatever you want. So some people are reading, they have their ideas, they take ayat like this,
and then they give out this meaning to other people too. I mean, what they're really doing is taking a meaning that already exists within and then kind of force-feeding it into the Quran. Again, points for trying. It's good that you're trying to get meaning there, but maybe we're missing the mark a little bit. Now, it's true that not everything is extreme like this. It's not always the case where we have these ayat which require context, which require somebody looking at the riwayat. Okay, how did the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, how did they comment on this, right? Don't we have something else from the ulama, tafsir, anything that describes this ayah, that'll give us the context. What was the reason for revelation, right? Sha'na nuzul, asbab nuzul, things like that. So we can say, look, the reason you guys are getting it wrong, with due respect, humbly, it's good you're trying, but the reason you don't understand it is because you don't have the context. If only you had this context, if only you read the history books, you saw why this ayah was revealed, if you saw the commentary, right, how the imams, the Rasulullah himself would comment on these ayat, how our ulama have brought all this stuff together, then you would get the picture. And that's what I want to talk about for tonight, inshallah, as we honor this occasion of the mab'ath and the bi'tha, right, the official designation and selection of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Not every single ayah, not every single thing out there is complicated though. Some might respond, they say, look, not everything needs a tafsir, does it? Like if Allah says, for example, right, all right, don't drink, don't gamble. Do you need a tafsir for that? No, it means don't drink and don't gamble. There's no context involved. You can read the context, it'll help you. You can read tafsir, it'll add more flavor to it, sure, more depth. But okay, it's giving you a basic message, just read it and that's it. Or ayat which talk about, that, killing one person is like killing all of humanity, saving one person is saving all of humanity. All the ones that people talk about, it's like, okay, these are very obvious things. We don't need to go after context. It's good to, but you don't have to do it. Anybody, any non-Muslim or any new Muslim, whatever, can just look at it and read it and get a meaning, and that's fine, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. What I'd like to do for tonight is to say that, maybe we should be careful and kind of re-examine some of these notions that we've developed over time about how we understand some of these ayat of Quran, some of the principles that have been left by the ma'asumeen, alayhimus salam, things that we maybe take for granted a little bit. Maybe I have my own ideas and I just force-fed it into Islam, and I expect Islam to just output the same thing. Right? If I believe in a certain ideology, I'm going to go look, right? This kind of self-image or, evidential bias and things like this. So, confirmation bias. I'm going to go look for certain riwayat, ayat that feed what I already believe in. Sometimes we do that. But some people might say, does this really happen all the time? What I want to try to show, inshallah, tonight is that, yes, it does happen more often than we think. It's not always that it's incorrect, but sometimes we get it so off the mark that it's almost as if it's wrong. We've diluted the message sometimes so much that it's like, what do we have left? Like, that's not the full picture of what Allah wanted us to get across. There is so much more that Allah wanted to offer us. And because it is the mab'ath and the bi'tha, what we'd like to discuss for tonight is, and I'll need your help over here, is to see if right from the beginning, did we miss the mark when Islam was officially, let's say, open for business, basically. When it was officially started, the first 5 ayat came down to Rasulullah, right, in that cave in Ghar al-Hira, when he was on, well, which mountain was it? You guys know? Jabal al-Nur, right? Is the mountain of light, or technically it would be Nur Mountain, but when you say it Nur Mountain, it sounds like a theme park attraction, right? Like, oh, did you go on Nur Mountain? So it sounds weird to say it like that. Jabal al-Nur. So first let's figure it out. Which surah would contain those first 5 ayat, according to most mufassirin and historians? Which surah is that first one that was revealed to Rasulullah on this day or night? So my ears are really bad. The whispering is not going to work for me. You have to scream it out loud. Hasan, okay. So that's Suratul Alaq, right? In Surah Alaq, the first ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Okay. So there's 5 ayat that have been revealed, but that's going to take a lot of time to go into all those 5 ayat. So we can't go all 5 ayat. We can't even finish the first ayah to be honest, for tonight. All I want to focus on for tonight is just that first word, that first part of that first ayah, which is iqra. Now, you tell me, what is usually two possibilities for how people translate that? What is the meaning of the word iqra? Read? Anybody else have any other guesses? Read and recite. These are the two most famous answers that people give. Iqra means read and recite. And this is obviously telling, Allah through Jibreel alayhi salam was telling Rasulullah to read the Quran, and there's the whole history. You guys know it. I don't have to tell you that. I want to focus on this idea. So what happens, and I'm sure you've seen this before too. We see this translation, we've heard it over and over again, of iqra. Iqra means read. That's usually the more famous one, read. So somebody sees that, Muslim or non-Muslim, and they say, wow, the first thing that was told to the prophet of the Muslims, or the last prophet, if we're being technical, is what? Is to read. Wow, Muslims have this culture, and they've been instructed with the culture of reading. That's a wonderful thing to do. So you'll see posters everywhere. You'll see people talk about it in Islamic schools and other places that see Islam is encouraging Muslims to read. This is a culture of learning that's developed. Right? Well, this is a wonderful message, isn't it? Now, hopefully you know where I'm going with this, right? I kind of already gave you the punchline before, but how accurate is that translation of read, or even if we say recite? How accurate is that? I'm not going to say it's 100% wrong. No, definitely not. It's fine. It works. Yes, it does work. It's not incorrect in that sense. But the issue is we have to take the rest of the Quran, the other context behind what's going on, and even from the word itself and the root word and where it comes from, this is what they usually do in Quranic studies, to see is that all that Allah was trying to get across? Is He just telling the Prophet, just read and recite what I'm putting into your heart now? Is that it? Doing Jibreel alayhi salam? Or was there something more? Was there a bit more depth, right? Was there something higher and more spiritual involved on this occasion? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, well, again, let me go back now. That idea that a lot of us have, which is okay, but we're teaching people Islam wants us to read, wants us to learn. That's not wrong. Of course, Islam wants us to do that. We have many other ayat and riwayat which talk about, utlub al-ilm law bisin. There's so many, right? Learn from cradle to the grave, all these things. Seek knowledge from cradle to the grave. We have all this, so we know that that's a principle. So that principle is fine, right? That idea in Islam of learning and reading, it's there, no problem. To take it from this one word, or the ayah itself, but even the word itself, is that something should we be doing that in the first place? Well, okay. We know that in many parts of the Quran, there are specific ayat where the command comes to the human beings, right? Ya ayyuhan nas, and then it'll say, X, Y, Z. Oh, people, do this. Ya ahlul kitab, right? Just ahlul kitab. Ya ayyuhul kuffar, right? Sometimes the kuffar are addressed. And then, of course, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, right? Oh, mu'mineen, here's an address for you. So different groups are addressed sometimes, and there's a command that comes from them. So obviously, we would understand if the command is coming from mu'mineen, then it has nothing to do with Christians or Jews or anything like that. That should be obvious, right? If there's a specific audience that's being addressed, then it's for that audience only. So if over here, the command, and it's a singular command. It's not like a plural in terms of the Arabic. It's iqra. It's saying singularly, because it's the Prophet that's being told to iqra, meaning read or recite for now. Is it really fair to now extend that and say, see, Allah has commanded all of us to read and recite the Quran? From that ayah, it seems like we're pushing a little bit, we're milking it. Or, pun intended, we're reading a little too much into it, right? It's a command for the Prophet. Because in the same light, in other ayat of the Quran, where let's say just the wives are addressed, you'll see other mufassirin and other people say, oh, but these ayat are just for the wives. Why are you taking it out of context? Don't use it for all Muslim women. It's only for the wives of the Prophet. Like, okay, if that's your principle, that's the way you want to approach things, then all these ayat which are only addressed for the Prophet, then don't put it on all of mankind too. Now again, it's just a small point that I want, because I'm not taking away from the principle that we should be reading and learning, because it's obviously there. We're supposed to recite the Quran and read the Quran. We all know that. What I'm saying is the way that we're trying to deduce and understand these ideas, right? Just from that single word, maybe that's not the place we should get it from, maybe, right? Another part of this too is, okay, it's saying read. Are there any other words, right? Let's just say, again, we'll go back to the idea. Let's just say that we're talking about the idea of iqra. We take a principle from that says, okay, we should be learning and reading and reciting the Quran. Okay, sure. Is there any other word that we use in Quranic language and even in our day-to-day language, Islamic language and parlance? Is there another way we describe reciting or reading the Quran? So if we're talking about iqra, from there we get qira'ah, right? Qira'ah literally means reciting and reading, right? So we do qira'atul Quran. But it's another word that we also use too. That's right, like tilawa, Hasan, yeah. So tilawa, right? So that's another word that's, very famously used. So we have two different words now, right? We have qira'ah and tilawa. For most of us, we're going to look at them and say, all right, it's both of them mean read and recite the Quran, right? What's the difference? Right? If somebody says, let's do qira'atul Quran, or somebody else says, let's perform tilawatul Quran, for you and I, if somebody tells us, it's not going to make any difference, is it? A principle that hopefully has been shared with you before. If not, then I'll share it now. Generally speaking, if I can translate, if I am translating two or more separate words in Arabic with the same exact English, I've probably taken away from that Arabic concept. If I am using the same English word, or whatever language, if I take the same English word and I apply it to multiple words in Arabic, I'm most likely, and I'm saying 99.99999% of the time, I'm taking away something from the nuance in that Arabic. Allah's not haphazardly just randomly using languages, right? He's not just randomly choosing words, like he's sending down the Quran to Jibreel first and then to Rasulullah, obviously. And as he's sending it down, like, okay, I could use qira'ah, let me shift F7 this, look in the thesaurus and see what other word I can use in Arabic. Oh, let's use tilawah this time. No, that's not how Allah operates, right? It's not just randomly these words are being picked. This is being done with hikmah, right? This is the infinite, perfect wisdom. The same way, and this is a separate conversation, but sirat. How was sirat translated? Path. Okay. What about tariq or tariqa? You see, a lot of these words, and there's multiple other words you can do the same thing with too. We're going to start using the same English over and over again. But technically, in Arabic, sirat and tariqa, they're not the same thing, right? There are little differences here and there. So with qira'ah and tilawah, there are some differences. So the question is, why is iqra and qira'ah being used over here versus tilawah? Because there are separate occasions, right, where Rasulullah is saying and commanding and being told, right, yatlu alayhim ayati, that he's doing tilawah of the ayat of the Quran for all of us, or for the Muslims at that time. So there's clearly a difference between Rasulullah doing this qira'ah initially on this day, this night, versus him doing tilawah for everybody else. Right? There's definitely a nuance over here. To use read or recite, we're missing something else then, right? So that's what we have to try to figure out, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Just to give you an example of how in English there might be a difference, right? If, let's say we have to get our vision checked. I don't know how many of you have gone for vision tests before. I see a lot of you with glasses, so I'm sure it's happened before, right? So when you go there, usually for the vision test, what do you have to do? They got that board on the wall. The letters are all there, tell you to cover an eye, and then start reading them, right, line by line. So what do they say? Okay, read line 1 or read line 2. So what are they? They're just a bunch of, usually letters. I don't think there's numbers, right? Usually it's just letters, if I'm not mistaken. So, right, on this line, a letter, you're going, down for Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sheikh, please. I think I'm done. You can come. Sorry. So we're reading this board, and what are we reading? Just a bunch of letters. The same way for our kids, when you're teaching them any sort of alphabet, right? Whatever language it is, you have them read this letter. So that's one kind of reading where you're just looking at a letter and you're just pronouncing it or saying the name of that letter, right? That's one type of thing. When I'm just reading this stuff over and over again. I'm looking at, okay, first line X, next line Q, T, R, X, L, and then X, whatever it is. Is there anything to that? I'm just saying these letters over and over again. Is there any meaning to it? No, it's just me saying the names of the letters. That's it, just to test vision, that's it. Okay. So sometimes when we're reading, or the way we use the word read in English, it means just looking at a symbol and just saying the name of it, and that's all we're doing. There's no meaning involved, there's no context, there's nothing else, it's just say what's going on there, that's it, right? So that's one type of reading. There's another type of reading where, I mean, the more famous example is that, okay, now these letters, when they're put in a certain way, and they're configured, and there's spaces and everything to it, and you have meaning to each word, I put them in a sentence, now I can take meaning from that sentence. So that's another type of reading that's done. There's another type too where, okay, I know the letters, and I know that these things are forming words, but I don't understand what's being said over here. So we can think about similar languages. So if you know how to read the English alphabet, then by default, you should know how to basically read Spanish. Okay, we might not pronounce it properly. We don't know what it means, but we can read the words, right? So you can, the signs that are there, it has English and Spanish. I can read both of them. The top line that's in English, I can take meaning from. The second line, I can't take any meaning from. Or any other language that uses that. I think Italian uses it, right? There's many others that will use that same sort of script, the same font, the same alphabet. Same way for those of us who have some basic understanding of these Eastern scripts, meaning the Arabic script. That same script is being used in Urdu and Farsi, right? So I might understand, and I can read and understand Urdu, or I can maybe read and understand Farsi, but I can't apply that to any other language. I can read the word in, let's say, Urdu, but if I try, I can read the words, I can see what the word says in Farsi, but because I don't know Farsi, I don't know what it means. Or I might know Arabic, but then if I start reading Urdu, I'm like, look, I can make the sounds, I'll mispronounce them probably, but I don't know what they actually mean. I have no idea what the word means. So there's times where we have just a basic symbol. There's times where we have symbols that are put together that we don't derive meaning from, but we know that there's something that's coming out of there. But then that highest level, or the real meaning of read, and therefore the real meaning of iqra, which we'll get to in a second, is when you take all these small little symbols, you put them in a specific kind of sequence, you read them, you comprehend them, and you gain an understanding from them. That's what qira'ah is. That's what proper qira'ah is things have to be done in a specific order. And to add sort of icing on the cake over here, qara'a, or qara'a, the actual root word for qira'ah or iqra and all that, the actual verbal meaning. Qara'a has the same exact meaning as jama'a, to collect and gather things, to put things together. But you wouldn't use it in the same context, right? So I could say that, in Arabic, like I did jama' of books. You can say that. But you couldn't say I did qira'ah of books and it means I put books together. Qira'ah in that context means that I had to look at the words, read the words, and comprehend something in my mind. Some meaning has to develop. And you can see, hopefully, how these two ideas connect. Because what am I doing is I'm taking all these small little symbols, connecting and bringing them together, and then I get a word. I take multiple words, I string them together, connect them together in a sentence, and through all of that, I should be able to derive some meaning. I know what the speaker or the author is saying. That's what qira'ah actually means. Now, that's one level of it. So when this is being done, this is what's being said to Rasulullah, it's not simply like, all right, here's some words and just read them. It's like, no, this is a full context that has been given to you. Now gather all of this meaning and now prepare to give this out to everybody else in mankind. You are taking all of the meaning that's ever been given before, which then means by default, anything else that's been brought previous to this has always been incomplete. It's always been an incomplete sentence or an incomplete paragraph. There's always something missing. The prophets brought something and it was good, it was beneficial. You got some basic ideas out of it, but it wasn't complete. But now, when the Quran is there, when Rasulullah is there and he's ready in that cave, when it's there and he's told iqra, he's told now at this higher level that gather all of the haqa'iq, gather all of these realities together, and now you can present this al-haq, this one true reality to everybody else. That's the deeper, more spiritual meaning of iqra and qira'ah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So qira'ah has this idea of we're supposed to be looking for context. It's not just me taking one little word, one ayah, one surah. It's Iqra al-Quran, Iqra al-Kitab, the whole book. It's not little bits and pieces that I'm grabbing and attaching meaning however I want. This is Rasulullah, having everything revealed to his heart, and now saying, I have to teach you all about reality. But you have to do so, mu'mineen, muslimeen. I want you to understand that you need context for the meaning that you derive in your lives as well too. Don't just take one little thing out of context. This Quran that's being given to you, this mu'jiza, this beautiful blessing that we still have in our hands, this is supposed to be what gives context to your life. This is what gives context to reality. Don't go out randomly and start looking for meaning elsewhere. You know, there's some people who do this. So I had somebody that I knew. He had this decision he had to make. It had to do with, work decision, whether he was going to apply for a new position or a change in his organization or corporation. And he wasn't really sure. And you know, the default for most people at that point is what? Istikhara, right? But he didn't want to do that. Good for him. So instead, he was looking for a sign. Right? He's like, I need to, should I do this or not? So he was looking for a sign. And he told me this, that he's like, I was driving, to work one morning, and as I was driving, I looked up and I saw a billboard. And the billboard said, just do it. He's like, SubhanAllah, Allah sent me a message. And you know me, I can't hold in my what's going on inside. I had to laugh. I'm like, what are you talking about? Allah sent you a message. What do you mean? I was like, that's Nike trying to convince you to buy products. What do you mean? That's not Allah sending you a message. But that's how some people do it, right? They see something and they think that it's a message. And for some people, it's something else too, where maybe they're, eating. They feel like, I'm full, I'm done eating. And then somebody says, they're maybe out somewhere at somebody's house at a dawat or something. They say, oh, they put some more on their plate. Allah sent me a message that I have to eat this now too. I have to eat more than that, right? This is how some people, they read into things. No, we don't create the melak and the barometer. We don't make this stuff as we go along. Other people who don't have a criteria, they don't have a barometer, they don't have the Quran, they don't have al-haq to go back to, they don't have the ma'asumin, the Ahlul Bayt, they don't have ulama. Of course, then they're going to make things up as they go along. Wherever they are, I'll make my own meaning. That's all they have left. But you and I, we don't need to do that, and we shouldn't be doing that. One of the meanings we take away on a night like this is that I have to be very, very careful that I'm not creating my own meaning. Allah said, I know that insan, I know you want to do this. I know you want to start finding these things everywhere. But I'm telling you, there's two different places you can look, and it should hopefully take you to the real context that you should be seeing. One is within yourself. Yes, I do want you to look within yourself. Look within yourself. See that book of your own self, your own nafs. See what it's like. Right? That, as you say, ma'rifatun nafs. See what you're actually like. See the positive traits you have, the negative traits you have, the things you should be working on, the things you should be improving. Or in a very simple context, the people who maybe are not sure about Allah, His existence. Right? That's a very simple one. Look within you and see how, amazing our design is, our creation is, and then how could you reject a creator after all of this? It doesn't make any sense if you just look within that universe that exists within us. And then you see that same symmetry existing outwardly as well too. So the qira'ah that we take, this context that we take is, on one level we look within, and then we look outside in the world too. And to make sense of everything, we have the Quran to say, I can explain to you what's going on inside of you, in your soul and your nafs, and I can explain what's going on outside too, all these ayat and signs that are out there. And I'll show you how to purify yourself with that too. And when you go down to that practical level of saying, okay, I'm ready to do that, that's where tilawah comes in. That's where some of the ulama say the difference between qira'ah and tilawah. Qira'ah is more of this theoretical, abstract kind of cognitive exercise of, I have to take this big macro picture of all of reality. Now, when I'm ready to say, okay, Allah, let's see what this is about. I take the Quran, I'm doing tilawah, I'm reading the ayat, and I'm saying, I need to implement this somehow. Not the way that I want, the way that Allah is telling me to do so. So tilawah is more of the action-based thing. It's the implementation. So we'd say that qira'ah is more theory, and tilawah is the application. That's how the two differ. But yeah, you could just say simply, although both of them are recitation. But one, at the higher level, is a recitation and a reading where I need to get full meaning from this. I need to get the big picture. And then after that, when I do tilawah, I'm reading these things. Okay, now how do I bring it back down to earth? Bring it back down to my life. How do I apply this stuff in my life? And they say tilawah is incomplete unless I'm practicing it and actually acting on these ayat. Right? It's not tilawah otherwise, in the real sense of the world, right? In the real sense of the word. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Even in English, if we think about the way that sometimes we, allegorically, metaphorically use the word read, we use it this way too. Let's just say I decided to go on for another 20, 30 minutes. And I see everybody's on their phones, or they're yawning, they're they're looking at their watches or whatever. Then somebody might tell me, Hasan, read the room, right? So that's another way we use read, which is that, hey, stop being arrogant about this, thinking that you know what's going on. Take a look at all the context clues that are out there. Everybody's passing out, right? Wrap it up. Everybody wants to go eat now. Enough, right? That's it. So we use read in that same way too, right? Or even the word collect, right? Which is the essential meaning of qira'ah, as we were saying, of qira'ah. Even that idea of collect, when we're talking about the spiritual journey that we have. Sometimes when somebody loses themselves, what do we say? You need to kind of get it together. You need to collect yourself, right? Gather your senses. We use these same sort of words too. And this is what I think is the beauty of these various languages that we have. Even though, yes, there might be differences in translations and interpretations, there seems to be this same sort of ruh, this spirit that kind of flows through all different languages. That same kind of meaning, essential meaning, is coming through every single language. And we all use it in these ways, but we don't connect it back to this stuff sometimes. We have to make sure that the context that we are offering is not one of our own. And on this night where we are honoring the official designation of our Holy Prophet, then what are we doing? We're saying, look, the context that we get for any of this is coming through you. It's not through me. It's not some scientific experiment, some empirical study that I'm going and that's giving me context now to my life. You can do that maybe as a supplemental effect, sure. But no, I should be getting this straight from Rasulullah, straight from the Ahlul Bayt. That's the context I should be looking for. If I'm confused about something else that's coming right out in the public, there's so many socio-political issues, right? Still, right now, there are people who are still confused about what stance should I take about Syria, right? There are people who are very confused about it. And we can understand why that might be the case. It's okay, now the context about how to read the situation, where do you want to get that from? Do I take, right, somebody else's political philosophy? Do I grab, Western political philosophy? Am I looking at, any of these modern-day European philosophers? Is that where I understand, realpolitik or all these fancy words, like Max Weber and all this other fancy stuff? No. Why am I looking at somebody else's political philosophy? I should be looking at Quranic philosophy. I should be looking at the philosophy of the Ahlul Bayt. What would they do and say in this situation when they see that there are multiple evils, multiple zalimeen and fasiqeen out in the world? Is there ever cases where sometimes there is this idea of lesser of all evils? Does that exist in Islam? Now, I can make it up as I go along. I can say, no, lesser of two evils. Yeah, that's just the way it is. But I made that up myself. Or I can say, no, let me go back and see if in the Quran, in the riwayat, as a principle given by, by Allah or the Ahlul Bayt, that there's a principle that says in these situations, this is where lesser of two evils might apply. And when I go back to these kind of situations, let's say, again, like something like Syria, then I might say, you know what? Should I be happy that a quote-unquote dictator has been removed? Well, let me see if that's the way that's the criteria, what's the criteria that I should be using there? Should I be happy now that, right, you have individuals that have moved in and stolen, I don't know, how much percentage of the land have the Zionists already taken, right, at this point? Should I be happy about something like that as a consequence? Oh, it's not a big deal. Is it always the case that just because a group is being oppressed, that whoever's in charge must be removed? Am I being a hypocrite when I'm deciding that, this country, if there's a fasiq, a Muslim fasiq or a zalim in charge, it's not a big deal. They can oppress minorities, who cares? But this country, oh no, they're not allowed to oppress minorities. It's like, okay, now we've got double standards working out over here. Is that the way that we should be looking at these things? I'm not applying them on purpose because I think you know what I mean when we're discussing these things, right? And I don't want to give the specifics over here, but I think you understand. So all of these different situations in life, we have to be able to figure out, I need to go to a context, I need to go to this criteria that is outside of myself. I can't make this stuff up as I go along. And it's difficult for you and I to do that sometimes. Well, let's be honest, right? When we sometimes are put in a situation where we're asked for our opinion. And if you remember, post Roe v. Wade, this happened very, very quickly. We were put, the spotlight was on us. All right, give your opinion, right? What rights are you for? Right to choose or right to life? Pick one right now. And some people were, they were confused. I don't know, right? Some of them were saying, well, la ikraha fi din, right? Lakum dinukum waliya din. Isn't that one thing? It's like, okay, sure, that might be one way of looking at it, but that context, that principle that you took, is that the way that it's supposed to be applied or not? Did you take something completely out of context, these two ayat which had nothing to do with anything political or social or anything like that, and apply it to a situation like this? Is that what you did? Maybe. All right, that's what a lot of people were doing. Or again, some people were going to other extremes as well. So for all these various socio-political issues, Hasan, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Why? Oh boy. I can't even share that message out loud, can I? I have to read the room now. I can't say that out loud. Okay, sure. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let me give another example. Again, talking about the bi'tha. We have this very famous hadith that I'm sure all of you have heard multiple times, that you're aware of, that is narrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He's reported to have said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمْ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Right? That the only reason that I have been sent down, right? بُعِثْتُ, meaning that I have been designated and sent down and selected as a prophet, is what? لِأُتَمِّمْ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. To do itmam, to complete the highest peak, the maximum amount of akhlaq. Beautiful hadith. And you can spend hours and hours talking about what this actually means. What happens sometimes? Somebody grabs this, they say, all right, I got this thing, talks about akhlaq. I already have a preconceived notion. I don't care about ahkam very much. I don't care about the law. I care about being a good human. I care about being a moral human being. That's what I think matters for humanity. Look at this beautiful hadith that I found. So now what I'll do is I'll take this, I'll give it my own context and say, see, all these people who put too much emphasis on ahkam and fiqh and all this other stuff, on the sharia and taqleed and all this, they missed this hadith, didn't they? The Prophet himself, the Prophet said that the only reason he was sent down was to perfect akhlaq, you see? So why are you guys so obsessed with politics and social stuff and legal stuff when the Prophet's saying it's akhlaq? So let's focus on being charitable. Let's focus on not lying. Let's focus on helping brothers and sisters and all that, what I call hippie Islam, right? Let's focus on all of that good stuff. Now, are we taking this hadith and throwing it away? No. But we're saying there's a context to this too. Is the Quran filled with ayat about akhlaq? Absolutely, of course it is. Do we have many riwayat where people are condemned who were, heavy practitioners of Islam? Right? The famous one where there was a person who came and complained to Rasulullah. They said that my neighbor, this older lady, she fasts all day and prays. She's up all night praying, but she's got a very harsh tongue. And the Prophet basically said that none of it's accepted and she's going to be in hellfire. Right? Like, again, you could take that hadith and say, see, akhlaq is what's important, not the other stuff. Like, hold on, slow down. You can't jump to these conclusions that quickly. If ahkam and fiqh wasn't that important, then why would the Prophet bother teaching it in the first place? Why are the Ahlul Bayt mentioning this stuff? Why are they teaching these things? It's not the case that we have to take one part of Islam and put that on a flag and say, that's the one that I'm proud of and that's the only one I'm going to talk about. There's no reason to be, a supremacist for this specific type of Islam. You don't have to do that. And again, that works the other way too. Whereas, there are some people who say, they'll come and say, oh, Monana, this person, their wudu is incorrect, and they didn't bend properly in ruku, they didn't do this right, they didn't do this right, and they didn't pronounce this right. I'm like, okay, sure, but they're a good person though, right? Hold on, no, ahkam matters too, but why are you being so very pedantic about it? Why are you being so incredibly ignoring everything else in Islam? Why is that the only thing that you care about? And I'm sure there's so many different realms within Islam. There's a lot of us who take one little piece here and there and say that's what Islam is and that's it. There's a famous thing that our teacher used to share with us. This is a hadith where they say Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. He had a dream. And he went and he shared this dream to get the interpretation, the ru'ya, the tafsir from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Because Imam Ali is not just going to interpret it on his own, obviously. He's going to say, my Rasul is here, right? I'm going to have him interpret it. So he goes, he says, okay, Ya Ali, tell me your dream. He said, in this dream, I saw this beautiful cloth, all these different colors, right? It was amazing, these patterns and colors that were there. It's like, then I saw people coming, and they were taking parts of it, ripping it off, and running away with it. Would come and take a part, rip it off, and run away with it. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what is the meaning of this? He said, Ya Ali, this is a vision of the future of our ummah. Yarhamakumullah. He said, this beautiful cloth is Islam. What people in the future will be doing is taking each beautiful part of Islam and ripping it off the whole and taking that and saying that this is Islam. That one little part, that's it. Just the fiqh, that's what Islam is. It's just a bunch of laws and they run away with that. It's just about akhlaq and morality and they run away with that. It's only about politics and revolution and that's it and they run away with that. It's just about azadari, that's all that matters, they run away with that. Hold on. Don't we always say, isn't it taught to us from a very young age, Islam is a perfect, complete way of life? Aren't we always taught that? I'm sure none of you have been taught that. Islam, it's good, but it's not perfect. It's got good things for you, but it doesn't take care of 100% of your life. None of us were ever taught that. We were taught that this is it. Islam is all you need. It's 100% your way to look and approach and deal with everything in life. Health, wealth, transactions, politics, everything. Everything comes under Islam. Allah's written a rule for everything. Everything has been mentioned. Everything's mentioned in the book, although you and I, obviously, we ourselves can't understand it. So everything is there. It's like, okay. Why do we have this idea where we can take one part, rip it away, and just call that Islam? Now, don't get me wrong. We might be attracted and pulled, right? We might have a disposition that leads us towards one place more than the other. That's fine. I might be into politics a bit more, so I'm a bit more into being social activism. That's wonderful. If you want to go out, you want to, be involved in outreach and help the poor and do da'wah and all that, that's cool. That's great. Wonderful. If you're, interested in Islamic history and you want to read the books, wonderful. Go read. That's great. You want to study the intricacies of fiqh and go deep into that, that's beautiful. The problem isn't with somebody having a focus like that, right? Even if they're hyper-focused, okay, I want to study this and only this, okay, that's cool. The problem is when you take the rest and shove it to the side and you push it down and say, no, this is what Islam really is. And there's a lot of people who do that. Some, even speakers, with all due respect, some scholars will do that sometimes too, right? I mean, I'll even say for myself, my bias obviously is more towards metaphysics and irfan and philosophy, and sometimes I'll get carried away with it. I won't deny that, it happens. But I have to keep myself in check too, to make sure that I'm not pushing aside any of the other sciences. Right? Because we have many respectable ulama, maraji, who say, look, those sciences are not required. You don't need this irfan and metaphysics and philosophy. It's not necessary, right? You can stick with Quran and Ahlul Bayt and that's enough. Okay, and these are great ulama and we respect them. I shouldn't be one to come here on the member and say, forget those guys, right? That would be a huge, huge issue. And the same way when we come to, obviously, the plethora of opinions when it comes to the maraji, right? And there are some, unfortunately, who push a little too hard in certain directions. Like, why are we doing this? This is clearly not the time where individuals need to be pushed into more corners, where we need to be shoving each other and saying, no, you need to come into my box and my box. That's not the way it should be working. In fact, if we're actually going to look at an ayah like lakum dinukum waliyadeen or la ikraha fi din or any of these other ideas, or another beautiful ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, kullu ya'mal ala shakilati. That every single person works according to a certain shakila, a form, or some might say path, or disposition, whatever word you want to say for shakila. Meaning that we've all have these different ideas and ways that we approach things. As long as my milak is Quran and Ahlul Bayt, okay, then that's fine. The Quran has many places where it's mentioning ahkam. It might not be the majority of the time, but it's mentioned. The Quran is also talking about akhlaq. The Quran, according to some, has verses of more metaphysical, spiritual nature as well too. The Quran also has things about social issues. It has economic issues. It has everything. So for me to take one part of it and toss out everything else is a big problem. That means I'm not doing qira'ah of the Quran anymore. That means I've taken one little ayah that I like and the rest, I'm getting rid of that. I'm taking one part that I like and nothing else matters anymore. So hopefully on a night like this, as we remember and of course Allah in His wisdom has decided to put a night like this very close to our preparation for the month of Ramadan, the month where many of us reconnect back with the Quran. Maybe the rest of the year, we forgot it a little bit, maybe. We didn't put too much attention. Alhamdulillah that in the month of Ramadan, we put all that attention in. We put a lot more. Okay, hopefully with this sort of reminder that, okay, when I go into the month of Ramadan, okay, finishing the Quran in the whole month, yeah, it's a good thing. But it's good if I can finish the whole thing. It's good if, or maybe somebody could argue, it's better if I do not just the bare bones recitation or reading and getting it done. Maybe I should do some qira'ah of it as well too, of reciting it, comprehending it, understanding it, and putting it in the context of other things, which typically will come with a tafsir, right? Or something like that. And then I also should be doing tilawah as long as, alongside too. And tilawah was what? Tilawah was, okay, I've read this thing and this surah and this surah. Okay, well, what practical objective do I have for myself after reading this now? There's either a story that was behind the revelation of this that I should know that is hopefully going to change my life. Or there's something that I didn't know about the meaning of this ayah. I maybe took something for granted and maybe I should re-understand that. Right? The Quran being the word of Allah, the words of Allah. Is it ever possible for us to say that, okay, I've read the Quran cover to cover, I've gone through the tafsir, now I'm done, I've gotten everything I needed to know. Is it ever possible to have a perfect, complete understanding of the Quran? How can you go from the perfect, the only infinite one, take his infinite words, put it into a book and say, well, I can have a perfect, limited understanding? It's impossible. The Quran, they say, is an ocean that keeps on growing and growing. Every time you read it, every time, over and over and over again, it'll give a different meaning. Again, as long as that meaning doesn't come from me, doesn't come from some random place online, doesn't come from some random influencer, right? As long as it's actually from the Quran itself, as long as it's from the Ahlul Bayt, it's from a proper source, that's where now I could say, you know what, I've actually done qira'ah now, I've done tilawah. I've got some macro, big picture look, I've figured out how to apply this in my life. Now, hopefully, I can walk around and live the Quran. Hopefully, when I go out into the world, I can see the Quran out there. I can see these ayat. I can look within myself and see my issues when I look at the Quran. And this is what some of our scholars mentioned. They say the Quran, in actuality, is just a story of insan. It's a bridge between our soul and the outside reality. As I'm reading this should also be opening up the bridge to figure out what's going on with me. As I'm reading the stories of the prophets, which I know Sheikh Mahdi had done a series, I think last year or 2 years ago, which, okay, that's nice to have the history, but those stories, the people who were against the prophets, the reasons that they gave, the arguments that they would give, I need to make sure that I'm not on that side as well either. The same way we say every Muharram that, the behavior of the enemies of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the behavior of the people of Kufa, the people wherever they were, I need to make sure I don't have those same traits as well too. We say that, so we should be applying it to all the stories in the Quran as well too. I need to make sure I don't have that type of behavior. It's very easy to read into ourselves and say, yeah, I'm one of the good ones, right? Because I'm actually following Islam. But we know very well from our history that the majority, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, they don't know. أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, Allah says, most of them, they don't do tafakkur, they don't contemplate. أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ, they don't contemplate on these ayat of the Quran. لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, they don't have this sort of iman. So we know that there's a small percentage of us, hopefully Allah gives us a tawfiq, that can push deeper into the Quran, grab that bigger context, and then applies it into our lives. And I'm hoping, I don't know, where is it? He's not here. I'm hoping I can I end now? Yeah, okay. So, Jazakallah, again for your attention. Hopefully, inshallah, if Allah gives me life, then I'll see some of you back here this coming weekend, where we won't continue this, but hopefully this speech and the ones coming up this weekend, maybe we'll be able to put it into some context as well too. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا سيد الشهداء بكربلاء يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، السلام عليكم يا أئمة المعصومين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب الأسر والزمان الأمان الأمان الأمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره واجعلنا من خير أعوانه وأنصاره وشياعه والمستشهدين بين يديه. السلام عليكم جميع المعصومين والأنبياء والمرسلين ورحمة الله وبركاته.